Hey everyone, welcome. This is Database Builder 101. We're going to be learning how to create databases with Baserow. Thanks for joining. My name's Idam Nunez. You might know me online as Idam from the Shy. I'm a product marketing manager here at Baserow. And this is actually the first session that we're doing with a dedicated database builder, sort of a 101 session. We used to run a more of a comprehensive, all around webinar with the Baserow platform. But since the launch of the application builder, we've decided to split up the database builder webinar, and then we have a separate webinar for the application builder. So if you're interested in the application builder, I'll talk about it a little bit at the end. But we're not going to be going through application builder yet. We're going to be just talking about the database builder, how you get started with Baserow, talking about some database principles, essentials, and obviously the overall Baserow platform. So I see some people are still filtering in. I know a handful of you also just registered and let me know that you couldn't attend the live session, but you still wanted the replay, right? So you registered, so that's all good. You'll receive the replay after the session if you registered. So no worries if you need to hop off, hop back in. We'll be around for about 45 minutes. Of course, if anybody has questions towards the end, then I'm happy to stay another 10, 15 minutes if necessary. We can go through some other concepts, principles, whatever is needed. But for the sake of everybody's time, let's just get into it. So one of the first things that I get asked I've gotten asked in recent months, since Baserow is now a full-fledged platform with the application builder, we've got AI features. I just wanted to share this little diagram about the Baserow platform and the different products that we have. So today's webinar obviously focuses on the database builder. Then we have our application builder, which is great for building internal tools, public portals, private portals, whatever you might need. And it uses the data that you build in the database builder. So the natural first step is getting familiar with the database builder. Once you've got a good grip on that, natural next step is to move into the application builder and start creating something for internal or external users. And then I mentioned the logic builder, and you see it's a little grayed out there, or rather just a little bit more translucent, because we are working on a logic builder as well for native automations within Baserow. More to come on that, but let's keep moving forward. Another big question that we have is, what do our users build with Baserow, right? Like what can I actually build? If I start using Baserow, what do I actually get out of the platform? Baserow is a super horizontal product, which means you can use it for virtually anything. You can use it to use a product roadmap. That's probably one of our most common use cases. Project management is perhaps our most common. Data repository as well. So whether you have content, data, research, anything like that, if you work with large amounts of data, Baserow is a phenomenal platform for that. You can build a CRM, you can build an HR system, so you can manage your end-to-end HR process if you go from recruiting to new hire onboarding to trainings, policies, anything like that. And then, of course, you can use it as a back-end database for web applications as well. And the application builder actually helps facilitate that quite a bit. But again, it's all with the underlying data of the database and what you build in the database builder. We're going to go over some relational database principles because usually what happens is if you're joining and want to get started, you may be new to relational databases. You may be coming over from spreadsheets, and there are a couple of important concepts that we need to touch on. So when we think about databases versus spreadsheets and how we transition our thinking, you can kind of think of your database as your workbook, right? When you open a spreadsheet, like an Excel file, for example, you have your entire file is a workbook, right? That's sort of your database in Baserow. And then within that workbook, you have sheets, right? And those sheets are sort of like tables. So, um, the terminology is a little bit different, but conceptually, it's similar in the hierarchy. With that said, the most important difference between the two is this concept of relations. Relations maintain your data integrity and they prevent redundancy. So if you were to create let's say an inventory management system in a spreadsheet, and you have one sheet with your orders, another sheet um, with your customers, another sheet with your suppliers, theoretically, they relate to each other, right? Uh, but the spreadsheet won't relate that. When you update one sheet, you'll have to go to we'll have to go to another sheet to update a record there, and then you have to go to another sheet to update another record there. A relational database changes that. This concept of relations is integral to databases, and once we hop into Baserow itself and the database builder, um, we'll kind of see the importance of that and um, how you need to create these relations in order to maintain data integrity. It also just makes it a lot easier to work with your data. Don't be intimidated by this concept of relations. It's self-explanatory, right? You're creating a relation between one table to another table to another table, and it. Like I said, it helps manage your data like never before. So more to come on that. When we talk about the hierarchy, and we jump into Baserow itself, first thing you see is your dashboard, right? And this dashboard has workspaces. Those workspaces then have databases, and then every database is composed of tables. Tables at the intersection of those, or sorry, I skipped. The tables then have fields, right, which are the vertical columns, and then rows, which are horizontal. And then that intersection is a cell. That's similar terminology from a spreadsheet. One thing that spreadsheets don't have are views, and we're going to take a look at views as well. But views exist at the table level. They only exist at the table level, not at the database level. So if you were to change something, if you were to create a view on table A, it will only apply to table A. You can have table A, B, C, D, E. It will only apply to table A. We're going to go through views later. Now, one of the most prominent questions that we get when working with data is this: is why can't I delete this my first field, which is called the primary field? And this is a relational database concept. This primary field is essentially what's called a primary key in databases, and this primary key is a unique identifier. So this unique in order to have relations, you need to have an identifier. And so if this becomes your identifier, if you were to delete this, you would remove the relation from any other table. Tables would not be able to locate any other table. So best practice for this field is make it unique and also try to make it readable, because it's the field that shows up in other tables that you relate to. So if we look at our example here, it looks like we have a project management system, and we've got a couple of different projects, right? We've got rebranding the website. We're doing customer research. We're modernizing the logo. We're creating a barcode app. These are the names that will show up in, say, the clients table. So when we're working with Acme Corporation, we're going to see that for Acme Corporation, we're working on rebranding the website. And you can see we have other linked fields as well, like the project lead and the project team. Those are linked fields, and that's how they appear in your other tables. However, think about it this way: if you have, let's say you're modernizing the logo for 3 different clients, right? Right now we only have one project, but let's say that the first 3 projects are actually modernizing the logo. If you just say modernizing the logo and you try to create a relationship between your clients, when you go to your client table, you're only going to see modernizing the logo, but you're not going to know exactly which client. I mean, you can click into the record, but just based off, like just right off the bat reading the table, you're not going to know which client is which client you're working on for the logo project, right? So best practice might be modernize, to name the field modernize logo -1 or modernize logo client name, and we can use formulas to automate that process too. This is a very simple example, but it's also a very common example because you typically have multiple projects and there's a lot of overlap, right? So making this field unique, but also readable is going to go a long way in helping you manage your data. Okay, let's talk about view types. So grid view is the spreadsheet-like view that we're all familiar with. If you work in Excel, Google Sheets, Zoho Sheets, anything else, this is what you're most familiar with, right? It's great for tabular data. And you've got a gallery view, and gallery view is really helpful for image-centric data sets. What I mean by image-centric data sets is think of like an employee directory where you keep track of your staff, maybe contractors, and you have profile pictures for them. Anything that would be easier to identify visually, gallery should be your go-to view. Baserow also has form view, which is good for data intake. You create a form, send it out, it goes straight into your database. No need to copy and paste data anywhere else, have it be lost. Pretty straightforward, just data intake, form view. With that said, form view has this really cool feature called conditionals. You can set conditional fields to appear and disappear based on criteria. So if you want to hide a field until somebody answers a different question, you can do that. If you want to make it appear until somebody answers a question a certain way, we can do that. And I'll showcase that once we jump into the database builder. Now within form view, we also have survey mode, and it's still a form, but it displays it at one question at a time. So if you have a really long form with maybe, 20, 30 questions or so, and maybe you think it's a little bit long, it's a little bit overwhelming, it might be easier to just display your form one question at a time. So it's just a nicer way to display form view, but the conditionals and everything will still work as if you were using the default form view. Calendar, obviously best for date-centric data sets. So when you've got project kickoff dates, deadlines, anything that you need to kind of map out date-wise, calendar's your best bet. And then Kanban, which is also I'd say probably the second most popular view to use. It's kind of card sorting, great for statuses. You can just drag and drop. You can see when things are open, closed, in progress. Maybe you have a backlog, whatever that might be. Okay, let's talk about using field types. So one of the other great things about a database is compared to traditional spreadsheets is that you actually have built-in data validation rules just based on the field that you use, right? So you should only be allowing the desired data type in your fields. So if we have a project name, for example, we're not going to want a date field for that, right? We're not going to want a URL field for that. We want perhaps a single line text, right? Like we saw it earlier, modernized logo, barcode app, whatever that was, right? We want a single line text. If you have a budget, well, you're going to make that a number and maybe choose a currency. You have a due date, that's a given. That's a pretty easy one. Link URL, profile picture would be a file field, so on and so forth, right? So you want to make sure that you're choosing the right field for the data that you want to collect. You wouldn't want to be capturing, a date in a single line text, for example, right? Or let's say that you wanted to capture a date and you accidentally set it as a URL field. No data would even be allowed to be entered in the first place. By the way, I'm monitoring 3 different screens here, and I see that chat came in. So let me just check that. If you see me looking around a little bit crazy, that's what's going on. I'm moderating here by myself and presenting at the same time. So I apologize if I miss anybody. Just flag me down, and I'll be sure to check the chat periodically. But we do have a question from George here. George asks, are data validations built in, or do you manually create them in Baserow? Data validations are built in the sense that when you choose a date field, for example, and you enter a URL, it won't be accepted. So once you choose a field, it will only accept the data type that you select. Okay. Moving on from field types, let's talk about functions, formulas, and field aggregations. So the terminology sometimes is a little bit interchangeable in just typical English conversation, but want to be clear that the formula field uses functions, and then those functions make up formulas. So if we have 3 different types of functions, that creates a formula. Actually, they don't even have to be different types of functions. You can just have 3 functions, and that would create a formula. If you have 2 functions, that creates a formula. You can have just 1 function, and that could create a formula. But the reason I make this distinction is because we have a formula field, and that formula field is composed of functions that you typically put together. It can be as complex or as simple as you like in order to manipulate the data in your table. So functions are denoted with parentheses. If you work with spreadsheets or you're familiar with spreadsheets, you've probably seen most of these, right? We've got a concatenate function, which puts together 2 different strings. A link, you can see if something contains something. If sum, min, max, average, right? If you're working with numbers, if you're working with budgets, anything like that, that's kind of where functions and formulas come in. One thing that I don't have here is field aggregations, but that's because I want to show them in Baserow itself. So let's jump over to Baserow. And while I do that, if anybody else has questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Okay, so here we are in Baserow. We've landed on our dashboard. We've got our workspaces here. We've got our databases, and then once we click into a database, we'll see a table, right? So let's talk about some. Let's maybe jump into views. Actually, before we jump into views, I should say there are a couple different ways to get your data in and out of Baserow as well. Baserow is proudly no vendor lock-in. You can use Baserow as long as you want. If you need to export your data for whatever reason, put it somewhere else, store it, bring it back in. We make it super easy. And the way you get started is by, you can start from a template, which is typically the easiest way to start. And actually, if you're new to Baserow, I highly recommend you start clicking around, creating templates, or actually importing some templates. You look for different use cases. If you have requests for templates as well, pop them into the community. We're really quick about creating templates that people need. So if you're just starting out, it's really helpful to just jump in, click around, get lost in it, break the template, see why it broke. That's one of the fastest ways to actually just kind of learn and stumble across the platform. You can also import from a CSV. You can import from a JSON file, XML, and export as well. So you've got a variety of different options for getting your data into Baserow and out of Baserow as well. So let's start with a directory, and we have this employee directory here. Let's use this template, and we'll get a notification that it's installed. And I have it here in my workspace too. So once I click into the database, you'll see that I land on the first table here. Now, since we want to talk about views, let's showcase a couple of different views. Now, you'll notice that we do have a field here for photo. So when we click on the photo, we see we have different employees here, right? That we can just kind of like click through. So let's say we want to create a nicer looking directory with it's something that's a little bit more visual, right? Since we have a photo, this would be great for a gallery view example. So in order to create a gallery view, I'm going to go to the top left here, and we're going to create a new gallery view. And when you create a new view, you're going to be prompted with 2 options. You can either make this view a collaborative view or a personal view. A collaborative view is a view that everybody has access to. Everybody who has access to the table or database, depending on how you set up your permissions, will have access to this view. So if you want to be the only one who can see the view, you'd make it a personal view. Let's make it a collaborative view for now. We're going to call this gallery, and I'll make it all employees. Okay, this looks really overwhelming and pretty bad, right? We're not even really seeing the picture. We have a photo down here, which is not really helpful. So we need to clean this up a bit. The way we do that is we have to customize the cards. So if we go to the top right here, click customize cards. For gallery view, typically it makes the most sense to add the view that you want, the photo that you want prominently displayed as the cover field. So let's hit photo here. And by the way, I realize that I'm a little zoomed out, so I'm going to zoom in to make it easier to see. Okay, that is already looking better. I am zoomed in at 120%, so maybe that's a little bit too much, but you guys let me know if I'm too zoomed in or too zoomed out. I know everybody has different size screens, so okay, but that's already looking a lot better. I think we also have way too much information here for a single card, right? We have to scroll down to see the end of a single card. And again, I am zoomed in a little bit here, but still, I think it's too much information. Like, for example, maybe I'm not interested in the ID number. I don't need the middle initial, address. I think this is too much. Date of birth. This might be a little bit too much. So when we go in here to customize cards, we can just start toggling stuff. And depending on what you choose, this card should shrink. And let's say end date, no address, email. I want to keep it nice and clean. Maybe let's do phone number. And we also have the photo in here. Now it's redundant to have the photo in two places, right? We already have it as a cover photo, so let's just get rid of it in the field. Okay, that looks a lot nicer. Maybe we actually don't even need department. Maybe just title is enough. Okay, that looks a lot better, looking really clean. Yeah, this looks a lot better. Now we've immediately created a very visual employee directory just based off the data that we already had. Now again, views are unique to the table level. So if we go over to office locations, for example, and I look for that view, well, it's not in there. We do have a gallery view already here in the template. That looks nice and clean as well. We only have 4 locations in this case, but that's looking pretty good. Okay, now let's take a look at some other views. So if we go back to our grid view here, we can see that we have a status, and this is a single select field. So this means that an employee can only be full-time, part-time, seasonal, or temporary. When we have a single select field, we have the option to use a Kanban view. So let's create a Kanban view. And again, I'll make it personal, make it collaborative. And then let's choose by status. And same thing, maybe we customize these cards a little bit. We'll choose the photo. Let's get rid of most of these, or not get rid of, but rather just hide them for now. Okay, and so now we can easily see everybody by status, right? So if I scroll down, here are all the full-time employees, here are all the part-time employees, so on and so forth. Kanban is really great for project management. So in this case, rather than displaying employees, we could say, be managing our projects, right? So think of this status as an open project, maybe you have an in progress project, then you have a closed project, backlog, whatever it might be, right? And the reason this works really great is because you can easily drag and drop cards into different statuses, right? So let's say Rodney just became full-time. Let's also make Nora full-time. And by the way, when you change something at the view level, you're also making those changes you're making those changes at the table level, right? So regardless of the view that you're in, those changes will save. So if we go back to our grid view, for example, Rodney is now full-time. And Nora is now also full-time. If we go to our gallery view, and we don't have that here, but if we display it, you can see that Rodney and Nora are now full-time. And same thing, I can be in the gallery view, and I can say, okay, hey, you know what, Rodney is now actually seasonal. I want to change it to seasonal. And when I go back to any other view, the changes are reflected. So there's no need to save. Baserow works in real time. Collaborate with your team, and changes are reflected immediately. Okay, another view, form view. This one was already in the template, so I'm just gonna roll with what we had. It takes 5 seconds to set up this form. You basically just can add or remove fields here. When you add them, you have to go back into the form here and then say, hey, maybe I don't want the end date. Let's remove this field. Active, but in this case, we're talking just adding in a new employee, right? Which would automate your onboarding process. So let's actually preview this form, and let's actually set some conditionals field, because I mentioned conditionals during the slide deck, right? So let's say that I don't want the zip code to appear unless the address contains USA. It's just to make it simple. Okay, so we have this form. We can submit it here. Well, actually, we're not submitting here, but this is our submit button. You can change that as well. We can receive a notification on submit, and then we can add a message on submission, or we can also redirect to a URL. For now, let's just show a message. Okay. Actually, before we preview this form, let's also check out survey view, which is this one, which is the one that displays one question at a time. So again, if you have a very long form, this might be a way to go as well. But okay, so now we can share the form. Let's create a link to it. Let's copy it. You can restrict the form with a password if needed, and also if you were to ever if for some reason, like the URL got out to an unauthorized party, anything like that happened, you can always regenerate the URL, and the old URL will not stop working. So that's a really neat security feature as well. Okay, so let's fill this out, and middle initial none. Let's select some stuff here. I'm going to do a photo. This was required. Okay, so you'll notice that we don't have the zip code field here. And the reason is because we still haven't typed anything that meets the criteria that we set for the address field, right? The address field needs to contain USA. Only if it contains USA should the zip code field pop up. So in this case, if I type USA, then we see the zip code field appear. And now I can say, okay, hey, I'm actually in 90210. So this is a very simple use case for conditional fields, but very powerful because you can start building nesting and workflows that can create very, very complex, very logical forms depending on the data that you select. Okay, and then we'd submit. Although I missed a lot of fields here. Okay, I'm not going to add a file. I can go back and make this field not required, so on and so forth. But for the sake of time, I want to move through some filtering options, show you field aggregations as well. But are there any questions regarding views or data manipulation regarding views, anything like that? While I transition over, feel free to pop anything in the chat if there are. Okay, actually, while we're on the employee directory field, okay, I see somebody's typing. While we're on the employee field, I'm going to show one formula really quickly, which is a really common use case. In this case, in the employee directory, you can see that we have a last name, first name, and a middle initial. And let's say I wanted to create a view, or I wanted to create a formula with a full name. So what I would do is I'd create a new field. I'm going to make it a formula field. Let's call it employee full name. Okay. So in this case, we'd use the concat function. And we're trying to concatenate, and you can actually see here before I click, if we go to concat, we can actually see the syntax for it, right? So this function takes 2 or more arguments, right? So we're trying to concatenate anything, so on and so forth. And we see an example here. If we concatenate A1 when it goes to A1 false. Okay, so I just want the first and the last name. So let's concatenate the first name, comma, the last name field. No errors, that's good. Now you'll notice something weird about this, which is that there's no space in between, right? And this is because the formula, is respecting exactly what we wrote. So we have to be very precise with what we're asking for. What we're really asking for is we want to concatenate the first field, we want to add a space, and then we want the last name, right? So in here, after our first name, we use space, and then the last name. So now when we save this, we have a nice looking employee full name field. Of course, we can also add the middle initial and so on and so forth. Okay, let me take a breather here. We have a question. Question from Reno is, can you link specific data from a table based on custom input in the forms? Can you link specific data from a table based on custom input on the forms? Link specific data. In other words, can data from a table be shown in the form a specific? So is this? I believe this has to do with pre-filling. Is that right? If so, yes, you can pre-fill forms. So if you have data already that you don't need from the user and it needs to be pre-filled, yes, you can do that. And it's kind of beyond the scope of this webinar, but we do have documentation on it. Basically, the way it works is you would have parameters in the URL that say pre-fill this field with this value, and then when you share the form, those values will be pre-filled. But let me know if that answers your question. I'll make sure I understood it correctly. Second question from Rob. Okay, cool. Thanks, Reno. Can you go into more data modeling best practices? Views are really nice in a modern no-code database, but we have to start with the data first. Yeah, absolutely. Let me, just for the sake of time, let me come back to that one because that one's a little bit more involved. It's a really good question. I like that. When I first started getting into databases, this was actually really important to me. So I really like this question actually. But let me come back to it just because I have a couple more things that I want to showcase while we're just kind of in rhythm here, and then we'll talk about data modeling a little bit more. Okay, so let's talk filters. Let's go into this commercial property management database. This is one of our most robust templates here. We've got a lot going on. We've got a database that helps companies manage commercial properties. Excuse me. So as you can see, we have our tables here. We have buildings, units, tenant service requests, vendors, leases, and contracts, and these are all related, right? In one way or another. Buildings have units. Those units house tenants. Tenants submit service requests. Those service requests are taken care of by vendors. Tenants sign leases, right? And then we have contacts as well. Contacts are just individuals who, depending on how you want to structure this, is actually a little bit of your data modeling question, Rob. You can have a leasing manager. This can be a maintenance contact, counsel, agent, whatever this might be. So we haven't done any filtering yet, but filtering is like critical to managing your data effectively, right? So let's go to maybe buildings. I want to see what. Yeah, let's go. Let's do buildings. And right now we don't have a lot. We have 8 rows, but imagine you had thousands of buildings or thousands of rows, and we wanted to just see which buildings are in Chicago, for example. That's me, hometown. So let's just create Chicago. So let's create a view. Let's call it Chicago buildings. It's gonna create this view, and what I want to do is I want to filter out anything that's not Chicago, right? So first, I want to take a look at my data and see, okay, what am I actually trying to filter out? The city, right? So when I go to the filter, what I really should be saying is, give me anything where the city is Chicago. Okay, nice. So now that that decreases our data set to 5 rows for this particular view. We didn't delete any records, obviously. Okay, but now I'm seeing our Chicago buildings. I want to say, you know what? I don't want to see just what's in Chicago. I also want to see anything that's in zip code 60611. So we have our first filter criteria here, which we don't want to modify, right? Because we've already said, okay, we want the building to be in Chicago. And we also want the zip code to be 0611. Okay, that brings it down to 3 rows. Now, in this case, I didn't have to nest any filters, but you can add virtually an endless amount of filters here to keep drilling down your data. Again, we're doing this at a very small scale here with, we have 8 rows and we have maybe 50 units, I think. But think in terms of thousands, 10,000, 500,000, millions of rows, right? You can get extremely granular with your data. And you can then also start creating filter groups where you start nesting conditions together based on whatever you need. So you can find your information instantly. You can display it, however you want. So filtering is really powerful. I highly recommend, with any template that you get started with, or even just with your own data, start creating some random filters and just kind of see like what types of results you're getting with those filters that you create. Anything that you don't need, you can always hide. So maybe I don't care about anything except for this, and I want this view to be then shared, which again I can you can share because I need to share this with maybe some stakeholders, or I don't know. Really good use case for that is actually the service requests, which we can always same thing we can do here by here we have a Kanban by priority, but same thing, we can really quickly build, we can just say urgent requests, right? Actually, we built it here already. But here we go. Here are my urgent requests. I'm going to share this view. I'm going to give it to my service guys, and we can immediately see like what's going on, right? So super powerful features. Excuse me, I hope I'm not coming down with something. Something that is just kind of something that we haven't talked about yet is collaboration and also visualization with color. So in this case, you can see that we're only looking at urgent requests. We can color the left border of every row based on that field. So based on the priority field, because the priority field is red, we're seeing red here. If we go to all service requests, do the same thing. So if we color the left border by our single select, we could theoretically hide this field. And if you already know what the colors are, you can very quickly see, okay, hey, this is anything that's red is urgent, not urgent. I don't know what other ones we have. Oh, moderate, right? Instead of a left border, you can also do the full row. So like this. This is particularly helpful maybe in accounting as well, right? When you're working with with income and expenses. When you're showing revenue, maybe you make the background green, and then an expense you make it red, or whatever works for you. But this is a really nice feature of Baserow's clean interface. Okay, couple more things that I want to show here, and then we'll go back to the data modeling question. Let's look at field aggregations. So field aggregations are a little bit hidden in Baserow. This is actually something that the development team is working on right now, trying to make these a little bit more obvious. But field aggregations live at the bottom of every field. So as you can see, we have these clickable buttons here, and these are called field aggregations. And they allow us to see calculations about that particular field. So in this case, we're in the units table, and you can see that we have 24% occupancy, right? Because we've chosen the percent empty. So, or at least in the context of this example, we have a couple of units that are vacant, right? So here we go. Here are the units that are vacant. But we didn't need to find them. Even amongst 50 rows, we didn't need to find them to see that we have some level of vacancy, right? And the way we do that is just by hitting field aggregations. You can say, what's the percent empty? What's the percent filled? Which would obviously be the inverse of the empty. But field aggregations are essentially little formulas that have already been created for you based on the data that you have. These are contextual. So you'll notice that we have this field that we're looking at is tenants, right? We're not going to find anything. We're not going to find any of the other formulas that we'd see when we're working with numbers, for example, right? So we're not going to see min, max, average, sum, because there's nothing to sum. We're just looking at our tenants and how many of these fields are empty in this case. 24%, okay, or 12 rows out of our 50 rows. So field aggregations, actually really powerful to just get like very quick, helpful insights based on the data that you're trying to extract. And again, you can do this for every single field. You can check, hey, how many are actually unique? 48. I have 50 rows and only 48 are unique. That means that somewhere along the way, my data entry messed up somewhere where maybe I have a duplicate unit name and I need to fix that, right? So you can actually derive like really insightful information just based off field aggregations. So that's also something that I recommend you just kind of click around with and understand. If we jump to another template like business expenses, you'll notice that here in the, where do you have our numbers? Oh, right here. Amount, right? Well, now we're seeing different field aggregation options, right? We have our min, max, sum, average. So what's our average expense? 234. What's the maximum expense that we have? $1,800. Okay. So you can just, very quickly see what's going on. Okay. Might be coming down with something. Hopefully not. A couple more things that I want to show is collaboration features. Every single row in Baserow can be popped open to this row modal. This is what it's called. And you can see on the right side here, we have comments. So in comments, you can @mention just as if, you were collaborating with someone, pretend that this is my colleague and say, hey, this expense needs a receipt. Boom. Okay. I tagged myself, and so therefore I received a notification over here, which you can see. When I click into it, it takes me straight to the row modal. So you get maximum context into where you're being tagged, what information is required of you, for example, or whatever else you might need. Let's say I uploaded a receipt, or let's actually change something amount. Say, hey, actually this amount was actually $8. Okay, so I jump in and I could say, hey, colleague, I'm tagging myself again just because I'm the only one in the workspace, but pretend this is a colleague, updated the amount. I'll get that notification again. And if we go to our history here, we get an audit log of, or an audit trail, I should say, of what changed in the row. So I changed the amount from 12 to 8. If I were to change something else in the description, for example, in another field within that same row, we have a record of that. So this is really valuable because it, in spreadsheets especially, right? Like we get so accustomed to versioning. I remember back from my consulting days, we would create a spreadsheet. Somebody would create a spreadsheet, send it out to everybody. Someone would have to download it, make their changes, save it, version 2. Okay. And then the next person, okay, version 3, we'd get up to, version 97 at one point, and there'd be no centralized audit trail of what was going on, what was happening, when, who did what exactly, right? And things get lost along the way. So having something as simple and clean as row history is incredibly powerful. Now, another thing is just notifications. So in this case, I tagged myself again, right? And that's why I received the notification. But maybe I don't want to receive notification. Maybe I only want to receive notifications for when I'm mentioned. In this case, I was mentioned, so I got notified. But maybe, it's like somebody else might just be having a conversation, and I might have access to the conversation, and I want to keep tabs on the conversation, but I don't need to be notified for every single comment, right? Maybe 2 colleagues are discussing this expense, and it'd be good for me to have insight into the conversation, but I don't need to be notified unless I'm tagged, right? Well, you can configure that with the bell icon here and just say, hey, do I want to receive all comments, or do I want to receive only the mentions? So that's also something else that you can configure. Okay, kind of coming up on time here. Let's go back to the data modeling question. Let me clear this. Okay, so let me reread this for everybody so everybody's on the same page. Can you go more into data modeling best practices? Okay, so data modeling best practices. So let's start with does somebody want to use case? Actually, let's do a universal use case. Let's say we're running a restaurant. Okay, so let's create a new database, and we'll call this our restaurant DB. Okay, so the best way to do this, or the best way to think about this, when you're getting started with your data, is to think about the nouns. So we're running a restaurant business. Let's think about the nouns that we have, right? So we have people walk into the store. Okay, so we have people, right? Individuals, customers walk into the restaurant. They look at the menu, and then they place an order. They pay. They receive their food, or they receive their food rather, and then they pay. Depending on if you're running a fast food joint or not. We've got customers. We've got a menu. Maybe we have menu items. Maybe we have our orders as well, right? So let's start with that, because each of these nouns have properties to them, right? And this is how you should think about your data modeling. So let's start with the customers table. Each one of these nouns is going to be a table. So we have customer, and that customer, they have a name. They have they have an email, right? Maybe they have a phone number, and that's all we really need for now. Let's keep it simple, because we can get really complex with this. We have customers, okay, and we also have orders, right? Those customers place orders. Let's place orders. And by the way, when you're going through this, like talking about it out loud will actually help you, because the tables are usually plural. So this table is made up of customers, right? This table is made up of orders. Typically, like if you have a table that is in singular form rather than in plural form, that may be an indicator that you may be thinking about it incorrectly. So think about what your tables are housing, right? Okay, so we have orders. Let's make this an auto number field, because we just want our orders to be order number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth, right? We can just make it incremental. We have menu or menus, right? Like, let's call it. Oh, I thought I wrote menus. Okay, and we might have a breakfast, lunch, dinner menu. We have menu items. And well, like I said, we can put other stuff together, but we at least have the basic components, right, of capturing an order. Customer walks in, places an order, or looks at the menu, places an order, pays. Okay, so let's go with the classic Jane Appleseed. Jane comes in and places order number 1. We've created no relations between anything yet, right? So let's do that. Our customers need to be able to place orders. So let's create a linked field, and we're gonna link to the table orders. We also have a checkbox here that says, hey, do you want to create a related field in the link table? Let's leave it checked. Okay. So let's go back to orders, and you can see that we have now our linked customers field, because we created a bi-directional link. So let's move this over. We don't need this field. We don't need this field. Actually, I'm not going to hide it. And this is not a name. This is not an order name. We should call this an order ID. Okay. So order number 1 was Jane, right? Okay. We've just created links, a link between the customers table and the orders table. Now, we also need links to the menu items, right? Because an order is based off a menu. Maybe you want to know if this was a breakfast order, a lunch order, a dinner order. We also need a link between the menus and the menu items, right? So I don't know, I'm going to be really bad about like doing this off the top of my head, but let's just say tacos, I don't know, burger, soda, I don't know. So let's create that link again. And in this case, we want the menu items to relate to the menu, right? So here are the menus. I'm going to uncheck this one. And let's say tacos are here for the dinner. Burger is for lunch. And actually, let's add a skillet, scrambled eggs, and we'll make those breakfast items, breakfast menu items. And soda is all day. So we're going to add that to all 3. So note that we can create what's called a one-to-one relationship, which is what we have here. Tacos are only on the dinner menu, burgers only on the lunch menu. Those are one-to-one relationships. And we can also create one-to-many relationships, which is what we have with the soda. Soda's all day. You can have it with breakfast, lunch, or dinner. That is a one-to-many relationship. Okay, just want to be mindful of time here. So, Rob, does this help with data modeling? Just kind of thinking about like nouns and just like understanding which tables you want to create, thinking about the properties that those tables have. You create a table full of rows. Those rows should theoretically have properties. If you don't have properties, they might be better suited as a single select field, or maybe even a multiple select field. But if they have properties, like our customers have a name, email, phone number, maybe reward ID, right? Something like that. That could be something that you kind of get a little bit more complex with. But your table should have properties. The items in your table should have properties. I see William is typing. Let me just take a quick drink of water here. I'm speaking for an hour straight, and I'm kind of coughing, so it's allergy season, guys. One more question from Josh here. Where are comments / audits stored, and are they exportable? So they're stored in the underlying database, and they're actually not exportable, at least not from the UI. But there may be a script that someone could create and probably would be exportable. Yeah, like I said, that's actually the first question we've ever gotten. If you think that that's important, Josh, it'd be great to post it in the community and see if anybody else has that request as well. Because when more community members request a particular feature or have a similar question, that's a really good indicator to our development team that we should prioritize it. So this is the first time I've heard of this. It's a good question. I think it's a valid question if you want to export that the row change history or even just the comments. But I would take it to the community and get a little bit of feedback on it first. Thanks, Josh. Question from William. When tables with keys and foreign keys are imported via CSV, does Baserow recognize the link, or does it need to be manually created? Yeah, Baserow does recognize the link. That's something that we changed a few months ago, actually, where we improved on it, actually. So yeah, and that actually, I don't think I can show this right now, but during like an Airtable import, for example, yeah, I don't have a shared Airtable link that I can paste here. But if you do it from Airtable, for example, that'd be the fastest way to showcase that, William, is you just paste it in here, import from Airtable, and then it'll recognize those fields. Cool, good stuff. Okay, I don't see anybody else typing here. I think those were the last two questions from Rob, Josh, and William. So I'm going to stick around for another couple minutes, but if that was it from everybody else in regards to questions, then let me jump back over just for the final slide, and then we'll let you go. And share window. Okay, so last little bit of information. Oh, question from Reno. Do you share the video link of this webinar afterwards? Yeah, the replay goes out automatically. So as long as you register and you're already here, you've attended, you're going to receive a replay of the webinar. So yeah, don't worry about that. Last little thing I wanted to share here, resources. So we have 4 big channels where we have most of our resources, and that is YouTube, our user docs, community, and the blog. So YouTube is great for getting started. If you join the webinar, I take it you're more of a visual learner, as most of us are. This is great for, we have even some like pretty advanced tutorials. I didn't make mention of this when we were writing that concatenate formula, but we do now also have an AI formula generator. So you can tell Baserow in plain English what formula you're trying to use or what you're trying to do with your data. You don't have to specify the formula. You have to say, hey, like calculate the amount times the quantity and give me an average or something like that, whatever it might be, in plain English. And the LLM will generate a formula based on your prompt. So we're just starting to get into more AI tutorials here on YouTube, but it's great for getting started. General concepts, intro stuff, great for YouTube. Once you're a little bit more comfortable just kind of with Baserow on your own, and you want to maybe you're actually just like more of a written person. Like I personally prefer written tutorials actually. So the user docs are great. Every single feature that Baserow has is documented in here. So check out the user docs. And then we have our community. For community, it's the community is really broad. So if you have a feature request, you need help, you want to share template, you want to share something that you built, we always love seeing that, and we always share it on our social media when other Baserowers build really cool stuff with the platform. So hopping into the community, it's always good just to have an account regardless of what you want to do with it. And then the Baserow blog are more technical. You'll find more technical written tutorials, and some of these can get pretty advanced. Our head of content, Juliet, she does a really nice job with creating these tutorials. So that's also another resource to check out. But yeah, like I said, we also have an application builder webinar, and that is coming up June 11th. And we try to run these monthly. So, and again, if you can't join the live version, that's okay. You should still register, and because if you want the replay, you have to register. We can't send it out otherwise because we don't have your email. So register. And application builder is a little bit more complicated. You want to make sure that you have a little bit of a grip on the database builder first, because the application builder uses the data that you build in database builder. In the future, you will be able to connect other data sources to Baserow as well. So if you have data in a traditional, maybe Postgres database, you'll be able to connect it to Baserow. So exciting stuff coming there. Check out the new AI features as well. I didn't showcase any of those. Wanted to keep it, kind of simple. But if you think that it'd be helpful to showcase any AI features, do let me know. Email me, throw it in the community. Any and all feedback is not just welcome, but encouraged and appreciated. So yeah, I guess see you next time, and have a good day, everybody. Take care. I'm going to hang around just for a little bit more in case anybody has last minute questions.